Missy's behavior is getting worse, and in her return in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, she secretly explains why. The young Sheldon final not only marked the end of Sheldon's childhood, but also the collective story of his family in Texas. Georgie and Mandy's first marriage shifted the focus of its storytelling to its titular couple, with the rest of the McAllisters rounding up the supporting cast. However, since The Big Bang Theory spin-off is still set in Medford, bringing some familiar faces from young Sheldon is not only possible, it's almost mandatory. For context, young Sheldon's cancellation wasn't because of the lack of interest from the public. Instead, it simply reached its natural endpoint. However, while that was true for Sheldon, the prequel left many untold stories for the remainder of his family, including his twin sister. After years of being ignored, young Sheldon was already starting to give her something to do, and that manifested via Missy's rebellion arc. A near-death experience made her promise that she would finally change, but in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, she is back to her old ways, and arguably even getting worse. George's death has undoubtedly restarted Missy's new phase of lashing out. The young Sheldon final highlighted how Sheldon's family dealt with the unexpected loss so differently. Mary clung tighter to her faith, Georgie went on autopilot, and Sheldon was so stunted, he started repressing his grief. Meanwhile, Missy became more irritable and mercurial than ever. Although that restarted her bad habits, something else entirely motivates her to behave worse. Missy doesn't directly say it to anyone who could do something about her situation, but she doesn't. Instead, she slips up during her intense argument with her short-lived partner Todd. While they're in a shouting match, Missy tells him that he should know better because he's older. Granted that Todd isn't much older than she is, and that point doesn't exonerate her from her own mistakes, it exposes her continued need for an adult in her life. Because Missy was ignored by her parents for years, she has had to navigate so many of her growing pains alone. It doesn't help that Georgie's mom is also struggling with her grief over losing George and getting separated from Sheldon, hence why she can't provide Missy that support that she needs. Unfortunately, Missy's situation is only going to get worse moving forward in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage. She may not have pushed through with her shotgun wedding, but she is bound to make a lot of more mistakes per the Big Bang Theory canon. Even as she becomes a full adult and mellows out on her angst, she is set up for failure romantically, at least for her first marriage. The good thing is that older Sheldon's narration in Young Sheldon confirmed that after the events of the Big Bang Theory, she would eventually remarry and have a better life. The dynamic within a family can be intricate, with unspoken tensions and hidden secrets lurking beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed. In the case of Georgie, Mandy, and Missy, their shared history is a tangled web of love, jealousy, betrayal, and hidden trauma that slowly unravels, affecting everyone involved. While Georgie and Mandy's first marriage seemed like a romantic tale of two souls coming together, it soon became clear that the cracks in their union were more than just the typical marriage woes. These cracks, it turned out, were connected to Missy's deepening struggles and emotional instability. The story of Georgie and Mandy's relationship was one that was built on passion and excitement. Their whirlwind romance was everything one might expect from a first love, intense, spontaneous, and full of promise. Georgie, a charming and confident young man, had always been the center of attention. Mandy, on the other hand, was more reserved but no less captivating. Together, they seemed like the perfect couple, each complementing the other's personality. They had the world at their feet, and nothing could have prepared them for the challenges that would eventually test their bond. Their first marriage, however, wasn't as fairy tale-like as it appeared. Behind closed doors, the couple struggled to understand each other on a deeper level. Georgie, although well-meaning, had a tendency to focus on his own needs and ambitions, often neglecting the emotional complexities that Mandy brought to the relationship. Mandy, in turn, found herself caught in a cycle of trying to make Georgie happy while suppressing her own desires and emotions. But the unraveling of their marriage didn't occur in a vacuum. It was something that had been simmering beneath the surface for quite some time. Mandy's inner turmoil and dissatisfaction had been exacerbated by her relationships with the people around her, most notably her sister Missy. Missy's struggles, a ticking time bomb. Missy, from the very beginning, had been a difficult and unpredictable person. Outwardly, she was charming and engaging, but those who were close to her knew there was something darker lurking beneath her surface. As Georgie and Mandy's marriage began to fray, Missy's behavior became more pronounced with an intensity that was hard to ignore. At first, her outbursts seemed like a result of external factors, stress from work, relationship issues of her own, and the usual growing pains of life. But as time passed, it became clear that her behavior was more than just a reaction to life's pressures. Something deeper was at play, and it was connected to Georgie and Mandy's relationship in ways no one could have predicted. The first clue came when Missy started showing signs of resentment towards her sister. Where once there had been camaraderie and support, there was now a palpable tension. Missy, who had always been the more rebellious of the two, began to lash out in increasingly destructive ways. Her relationships became strained, and she pushed people away, even those who had been her closest friends. Her temper flared over small things, and she began to withdraw emotionally from everyone around her. At first, Mandy assumed that Missy's behavior was just a phase, but as her sister's moods grew darker and more erratic, it became clear that something more serious was at play. Missy had always been prone to bouts of self-doubt and anger, but her recent behavior was different. It was as if something inside her had broken, and no one could figure out why. The real reason behind Missy's worsening behavior. It wasn't until Georgie and Mandy's relationship reached its breaking point that the truth finally came to light. The unraveling of their marriage served as a catalyst, exposing the real reason behind Missy's deteriorating behavior. The truth, as it often is in these kinds of situations, was a painful one. Missy had always felt overshadowed by Mandy. While Mandy was the more calm and composed of the two, Missy had always struggled to find her place. She had been the wild child, the one who acted out in an attempt to get attention. As Georgie and Mandy's relationship blossomed, Missy had found herself stuck in the background, feeling invisible and irrelevant. But it wasn't just about being overlooked. Missy's feelings of inadequacy were tied to something far deeper, a deep-seated jealousy and resentment that had been brewing for years. From a young age, Missy had watched Mandy excel in every area of her life: academics, relationships, and even her marriage to Georgie. No matter how hard Missy tried, it always seemed like Mandy was the one who got the praise, the accolades, and the love. As Georgie and Mandy's marriage progressed, Missy's jealousy turned into resentment. She couldn't stand the idea of her sister being so happy while she felt stuck in a life that wasn't working for her. And then, when their marriage started to crumble, Missy saw it as an opportunity. The idea that her sister's perfect world was falling apart brought a sense of relief, if only for a moment. But instead of confronting her feelings, Missy internalized them, allowing them to fester and poison her. The deeper the rift grew between Georgie and Mandy, the more Missy's own issues began to emerge. Her volatile outbursts were a direct reflection of her inability to cope with the underlying emotions she had been suppressing for years. Missy's worsening behavior wasn't just a reaction to external circumstances. It was a manifestation of her internal battle, one that was fueled by a lifetime of feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, and a desperate need for validation. She had spent years comparing herself to her sister, and as Mandy's marriage unraveled, Missy's own emotional stability began to unravel as well. The fallout. As the truth about Missy's feelings came to light, the fallout was nothing short of explosive. Georgie and Mandy's marriage may have been on the rocks, but Missy's unraveling emotional state became the final straw that sent everything spiraling out of control. Mandy, for all her good intentions, found herself caught between her loyalty to her sister and the pain she felt over the destruction of her marriage. Missy, on the other hand, found herself alone. Her relationships with everyone around her were fractured, and her behavior had become so erratic that even those who had once been close to her began to distance themselves. She had pushed too many people away, and now she was forced to face the consequences of her actions.